pleasant ding. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah. You have hopefully are watching on live or on the VOD for our panel on how to recognize the best influencer for your game, which I know is a hot topic, especially within the indie space. Before I dive into introducing all of our awesome panelists, quick high level of what we're going to go over. We're talking about how to identify the right creators for your game. We're going to talk about how to kind of demystify that process, how to find the correct people easily without having to go through a bunch of iterations, how different size influencers and how that could fit or not fit, and the fit of game, all of that good stuff. Remember, feel free to pop off in chat. Any questions or anything, we will keep an eye on it, make sure we can have visibility and hopefully get those questions answered. But with that, I'm going to start introing our awesome panelists. I'm going to start with you, Kelby. Do you want to kind of chat about your history, who you're with, and why are you here? What can you bring to this convo, Kelby?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kelby May. I'm the Executive Vice President of Partnerships at Loaded. I have been there for about 4 years. For those of you who do not know, Loaded is one of the premier talent management groups in the gaming space. Prior to Loaded, I was at Twitch for 3.5 years, where I was running pre and post sales for all of their esports team partnerships. And then before that, I ran a couple different esports organizations. I was a managing partner and ran sponsorships and talent at Good Game, which owned Evil Geniuses and Alliance before we were acquired by Twitch. And then before that, I ran a team called CLG that competed mostly in League of Legends. The first 2 years they were in the North American professional circuit.
Flex, Kelby. All right, Ricky, what about you? Good luck following that one up.
Yeah, I'm Ricky Tran. I am the Director of Partnerships at Rainmaker.gg. For those who don't know what Rainmaker is, we are a metrics and analytics tool that helps the game publishers and game devs distribute their game keys to creators across Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Gaming. Before that, I was working at Streamlabs as their head of partnerships. Actually worked with Vicky as well too, and worked with the top 1,000 creators on the Twitch platform.
Awesome.
Short. Not as
short, easy. Didn't own any esports teams? Nothing?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Vicky, what about you?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Vicky. I'm currently the partnerships manager here at TikTok Live. For those of you who don't know what TikTok is currently the leading entertainment platform. Prior to TikTok, I worked at Streamlabs with Ricky, and I also worked at a VC-backed startup called Hamel. And then prior to that, I started off as a content creator, actually streaming League of Legends. So by the way, Leah, I just want to say Jared Fletcher says hi to you.
Oh, Jared, get out of here. Jared, too much. I knew someone was going to show up, and I knew it would be Jared. We love Jared in this house. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think let's dive in. I wanted to kick this first question off to Kelby. Something that I know comes up immediately when we talk about influencers is people are really afraid of the cost of that, and they don't really know what to expect. Especially for something that's efficient. I know there's a level of like professionalism for what you get to all of that stuff. So I wanted to know if you had a viewpoint on the minimum budget that developers should have in mind before they start even going into considering influencer pushes and all of that.
I don't really look at it typically with regards to like a minimum budget you should have in mind before you go into influencer marketing, but I can certainly provide insight into like pricing, methodology, and how we go about that process. Like typically the way that we are pricing deals for talent that are, exhibiting a game is really a function of a cost per viewer that is watching their stream, like average concurrence for an hour of sponsored broadcasting. The threshold for that can vary across the industry, but typically like we are pricing around $1 per ACV. So it's like really easy to calculate, right? If Lyric is broadcasting to 20,000 viewers, he's $20,000 an hour for him to play your game on stream, obviously, and it scales proportionally so that you know what you're getting in terms of reach. Different talent will have different rates based off of their desire to do different titles and all of that good stuff. But typically, like that's the benchmark that we see people operating at. And really, like that is a product of kind of market dictation over time based off of what clients are willing to pay, and also, you know, kind of the different rates that we've seen set in the market by some of the larger platforms like Twitch, who we do a bunch of business with as well.
You said something that this becomes the battle, right? You said ACV. What does ACV mean?
Average concurrent viewers. So over the course of an hour of broadcasting, what is the average number of people watching at any one point in time?
Okay. I just want to make sure that no one like left and was like, I can't wait to figure out what this is, but first I got to Google what ACV is.
I mean, people use different terminology for that as well. Some people call it CCV, but just internally, I refer to it as ACV. So,
love it. Okay. Vicky, Ricky, that's going to be a fun thing to do the entire stream. Wow. Okay. Any other thoughts that you guys have just in terms of minimum budget stuff that we wanted to pop off on before we go to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, there's ways that you can kind of like go back and say, hey, you know, we can go very, very low cost. You can get a, you know, platform that have the creators come to you. Shameless plug, like Rainmaker, we have that as a service where it's a very low cost, where creators come to the platform and are able to apply for game keys. So if you're distributing a whole set of game keys, let's say you have 1,000, 2,000 you want to give away, it's an extremely low cost method to have creators come to your platform, and you know, you're able to see their metrics and their stats and how they perform on that particular campaign over a course of period of time. Let's say, you know, 90 days is generally the you know, gold standard to kind of track of a launch of a game. So yeah. Vicky?
Yeah, I would also just add that I think it really depends on what the goal of your investment is, right? Like, I think if you're looking to get feedback from creators, I think that's one thing. And also just depends on, as a game, like how mature your product is. So yeah, I think like both had great points, but I also just wanted to add that, like, you know, it really just depends on like how mature your product is and what think about like what value you're looking to get out of the creator. Is it their audience, or is it their feedback, or is it their community? But there's also like, you know, different pricing points for kind of like the purpose that you're looking to work with influencers for.
Got it. Yeah, and that's a great kind of pivot into the next question, where I wanted to talk about what KPIs should be considered, right? Because there are so many different things when you spend money and you say, well, we spent all this money, but we didn't get any, we got a lot of views, but we didn't get a lot of conversions. Well, what does that mean, right? Are we going for a conversion in terms of signing up for, you know, wish listing something, buying it, or is awareness is the play? So I know that's kind of a hot one on how KPIs should be measured, because I think Kelby can attest to the fact that changes the kind of influencers you guys should work with. Did you guys have any thoughts on that? I'd love to hear them.
I'll jump in. Sales are, yeah, obviously king when it comes down to like releasing a launch of a game, but there's other like non-sales related like conversions you can consider. Say for example, like if you're doing like newsletters or email signups, this brings people back to your game if there's any like new patches that are coming out. You know, there's ways you could track this by providing like creator codes or unique promo codes. It doesn't necessarily have to be a discount on the game that you give, you know, because that can affect like your overall margin. But you know, you could have that code translate into maybe like a unique in-game item which doesn't cut into it, and then also provides a way of like tracking your sales accordingly. And of course, there's like your regular like referral traffic and your content growth. So like your evergreen stuff like VODs, you know, if there's you know, people creating tutorials on your game, you could track that, you know, via UTM links, you know, live content that's being created. And it always lets your game be relevant, especially when you're building the community around those types of content and conversions and KPIs and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think on our end, you know, like the sales process from a broadcast, if an influencer is doing it directly, is very, very difficult to track in terms of like one-to-one conversion, right? So we really tend transparently to not focus a ton on just like direct conversion. I think of it more as like it's a really great opportunity, especially if you're working with like a third-party tool that is retargeting any data that you get, where you get awareness from the top of the funnel for influencers or whatever channels you're using for broadcasting out, and then retargeting those folks for conversion later. There's a lot of, when we do KPI discernment, a lot of it is focused on based off of what are you paying, what did you get in, or what did you sign up for with regards to expectations for like viewership and reach, and then what did you get in return. There's a lot of discernment there that needs to happen, I think, from savvy buyers on their end, where they're looking at, let's say for an example, I'm talking to a broadcaster who streams, I have a game coming out and they stream in this category very commonly. They play this genre of game or something like that. We could probably expect that their average viewership will translate very well to whenever they're doing a sponsored stream for my title. But if somebody primarily plays a different game genre or a different category, even if they're like a variety streamer, it may not translate one-to-one. And so I need to go and find historical data that as closely matches my title as possible to make sure that I'm paying what I think the actual return will be on market rate. So.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add that I think it's also really important as a game developer on like the platform side of things to really think about like what does that experience look like when someone who is interested and looking to install a certain program, like how easy is it for them to install this program? Are there any hiccups? And also, are there any bugs in the program? I think all of this could really play effect into like how successful an activation is. I think just personally from my experience when working with influencers, I think the number one thing that I aim for is impressions. I wouldn't necessarily go directly after sales just because there's so many factors. And I feel like there's usually like a learning process that, an organization need to go through to kind of really like flesh out that experience before you kind of just put all your eggs in one basket and, just pay an influencer and hope for the best. Never do that.
Yeah, right. No, and I think it kind of highlights on something that I find really interesting too, especially for indies. It's that so much of the KPI, of course, they want sales, but also wish listing on Steam is something that's really, really big. And that's a really powerful way that you don't have to push a consumer to make that purchase immediately because you have no idea what that could be. But that I think is a really, really beneficial thing too. There's a question in the chat about what other KPIs other than numbers. I think all KPIs are going to end up as numbers, but deciding whether or not we want that to be hey, it's liked, hey, it's or they bought something. Those are two very different and intense transactions. If you're only gauging if something has worked or not based on whether or not someone purchased something, you're setting yourself up to have a really difficult KPI to like prove this out on ROI, I guess. Too many 3-letter acronyms. I need to relax.
To speak to Leah, the question about KPIs beyond numbers, the other thing that we really focus on a lot is like brand efficacy. And that's like more of a qualitative thing. But for example, there are broadcasters, across the world, and they may be in the same, they may have similar viewership, and they may have the same interest in a game genre, and on their own, they may be, when they're authentically playing a game of their own volition, they may have a certain demeanor and attitude towards it. But for certain people, when it is a paid broadcast and you have to deliver messaging around the title, like a flip switches in their mind, or a switch flips in their mind, and it's their ad reads or their delivery is just not as strong as somebody, who has really great brand ambassador skills and brand efficacy. And that's just something that you need to be diligent about in the investigation process, is finding people that where you look at them and you look at the organic broadcast and you're like, you know what, I think this person would be a great fit for my game. And you know what, maybe if they found it organically, they would be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're great at delivering sponsored work. And that's no knock against them. It's just, it's not a skill that everybody has as a broadcaster.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great call out of, yes, they look great when they're playing a game that they already know and love, but what happens when they have to do some kind of an ad read? I think that's a great call out, Kelby. I think next topic I kind of wanted to talk about, since going into, especially if you're doing this for the first time, these contracts can get confusing, they get long, they get kind of scary. And you can't really tell what you should be asking for if anything's missing. What do we kind of think some basic contract deliverables, like table stakes for a event or a influencer sponsorship thing is? And then also any tips and tricks, things you think are really effective to kind of request and add in there. I always say VODs that are republished if this is a streaming based contract. So I don't know, Vicky, if you had any thoughts of like basic contract stuff that you're like, this is exactly what you should get every time. If not, there's a problem.
Yeah. So, I always try to make sure that that I keep contracts flexible, because one, you never know what hurdles or blockers are going to run into, or what kind of delays and stuff. There's just a lot of unforeseen. So, I always make sure to add like a clause that like, if certain things are not met, then both parties are responsible to adjust the deliverables or swap deliverables, so that I'm leaving myself wiggle room to make sure that I still get the results that I want when unforeseen things are happening. And then another thing I think is really important is just making sure that you really start talking about like who owns the right to this footage post a certain period of time, or how long do you want your organization to own the rights to certain footage. So I know there's plenty of more, but I want to pass it off to Ricky and Kpis to have them talk about this as well.
Yeah, on the social media aspect, Vicky, I think the rights in particular is really important. One easy thing that like I personally don't like really ever like charge incrementally for or something like that is if you're doing paid like sponsored posts on a social platform that coincide with your sponsored broadcast, ask for whitelisting. Ask for the ability to do paid promotion behind that post. We see and like we get data insights from platforms where whenever you are doing and using like paid advertising behind a post that uses a creator or somebody who's recognized in the space versus like a generic actor or somebody like that, that content performs on a viewership like paid basis so much better than something that doesn't utilize a creator. So if you are able to, as a part of a deal, especially if you're working with a larger broadcaster and it's a bigger deal and you're like, hey, I want to get a little cherry on top, can I get 30 days usage and whitelisting attached to that? That is definitely something that I would recommend seeking.
That's a great call out. Ricky, thoughts?
I
know you always have thoughts.
No, mine. I mean, those are great answers, and I'm always the biggest fan of like being able to work in like VOD content into any deal, just simply because like YouTube is such a big, massive driver of sales. Like that's how I, as a consumer of content, consume content. So like whenever I'm looking for new games, like even nowadays, I'm almost. I don't even have time to catch live streams as much. So I'm always like looking at, what happened in the Nintendo Direct, and I could just pop into the YouTube VOD, like what are the new games that I'm very much interested in. So if you're able to work in the ability to have them create content that is just everlasting on a platform like YouTube, I would say that is a must have that you have to do. So
let the algorithm help you for
sure.
Absolutely,
for sure. And like it grows your channel as a content creator, and who knows, you might might get more work from the developers or somewhat similar as a content creator if you're in that same genre as a creator. Like if I'm constantly creating content on strategy games, constantly creating something on like shooter games, they'll find me through that platform and be like, hey, you want to try out a game? And as a creator, that grows me as a channel. And then I might jump into a new game, or maybe I'll go back to it. So it's always a nice thing to always think of.
Yeah, love it. A question that I've seen pop up in chat, I know it's a hot topic, Kpis, I know you get it all the time. Does it make sense to blow budget and get someone that's really big? Or does it make sense to go with smaller to middle-sized people and kind of spread that out? Of course, the goal should, before any of this, I think, to cut Kpis' question short and give a great answer, is that no matter what, they need to be someone that's already interested in your game is the number one thing, and then you can make that decision based on that. But Kpis, do you feel like in terms of results, for someone with a tighter budget, which do you find to be more efficient?
Well, I think that probably, typically speaking, you're going to find better efficiency in the middle and lower end of the spectrum. It will depend based off of your like title fit and how much the influencer is just authentically engaged and interested in your title, especially if your game happens to be fortunate enough to be something that has some momentum behind it. But really, you're looking for the viewership that I can get per dollar, who do I think is really going to be the best ambassador for my game and title, right? And that's the direction I would head. Now, I would say there is a little bit of like a Among Us or even Fall Guys effect, where if you do end up with the right size broadcaster and they show your game off on stream and it's a great product, like influencers are shining lights on, and visibility on something, but they're not going to make something that's bad like look good to everybody, right? They will expose the true nature of it. But if you do work with somebody who's larger, there is the possibility of kind of the network effect that extends beyond where, hey, because I'm seeing this large broadcaster do it, if Lyric or Soda Poppin or somebody is playing this title on stream, then other people see it who are broadcasters are paying attention and they start broadcasting it to their community. Obviously, much less of a chance of that happening with somebody who's not like a tastemaker on a live broadcasting platform, right? But if you're working with the business, and I'm sure it's the same on TikTok and other platforms as well, if you see some of the biggest people doing this, a lot of the content creators tend to follow suit and want to hop on the trend.
It's a viral aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about like larger creators is
Right.
like, they have that reach. So
Yeah.
Vicky, any specific things coming from kind of the TikTok side and from your history that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. So actually not related to TikTok, actually related to one of the startups that I worked at named Hamel. But they were essentially like an early stage product. And I remember we had the exact same conversation. Like, do we work with big influencers or do we work with small influencers? I would also just, want to make sure that people understand like there's a difference between like working with a small influencer that has a very tight and niche community that they can easily influence versus working with like a big creator who has the audience. But again, I think it goes back to like how much how much is the creator willing to champion or willing to promote the product? Like how much does the creator actually like the product? I think that's more important than finding like big influencer versus small influencers. I've worked with creators who have like less than 100 concurrent viewers, but they did an amazing job at getting their community on board and getting their creator network on board too. So I think it really just it's more important to find the right fit and find the right influencers who really are passionate about the product that they're promoting, because it really truly shows in every single thing that they do.
Yeah, I love that. A question that kind of popped up in chat, this is an interesting one. Other than the very basic places that you would look for an influencer and their stats, like Twitch and like TikTok, are there other platforms that you feel like you should also really hone in on? Like any of the, of course, social, I think my general thing would be look at every platform that they have, but are there any other ones that you guys feel like people need to be checking more, that it isn't like, well, don't just look at Twitch, look at all of these other things too, because this content's going to spread throughout those? Do a TikTok, do a TikTok push, do a TikTok push.
I would do a TikTok push for Vicky, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no,
one of the
I have
things,
no idea.
One of the things that I love about TikTok, and full disclosure, I'm somebody who spends far too much time on that platform.
Don't we all?
Is like
God.
everything lives and dies by the algorithm. So like if something is really, really good, and it's in a field that is adjacent to your interests, it will find its way to you on TikTok. So for us, I think that this has been a really interesting dynamic, not just across games, but across brands and stuff as well, where like historically, back in my day, when we used to do things like when you used to do stuff before TikTok, when you used to do stuff on Twitter, like it just pushed out to your feed. The number of followers was roughly like how many people it went out to. Now everybody has seen TikTok's success and really started to replicate like stuff lives and dies by content success. So you can't just do messaging pushes and have it just hit an audience because somebody has a high number of followers. The content has to be good. So if you can find people that are really good at creating that, even if they have low followings on a platform like TikTok, you can see stuff go really, really far if it's great content and finds the audience.
Yeah, I definitely want to say that, TikTok as a platform aims to push content that could be enjoyed by people of all ages. And definitely, we want to promote, content that are high engaging. And that's why, a lot of, you see small accounts with a few thousand followers have their TikToks blow up. And you also see, new content that gets discovered every day. It's just because, as a platform, it definitely wants to push for content that could be enjoyed by everyone. And I will say that, especially on the TikTok Live side of things, I would say TikTok Live is definitely more of a platform that further pushes that message, is that, as a live streaming platform, we really look for, content that could be, that are commenting, people are commenting on the content, people are liking the stream, people are sharing the stream. And it is definitely an amazing way to grow your follower base, but it is also an amazing way to kind of, share the message of, whatever game that you're playing. I would say TikTok really as a platform, especially on the live side, is more community engaging than a lot of the other platforms, because it aims to kind of push content that are high engaging and really community driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Good TikTok plug. Glad we got it in there.
Yeah.
I loved your intro. You're like, if you don't know what TikTok is, I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Who doesn't know what TikTok is?
Yeah.
An interesting kind of next thing. Ricky, did you have any $1 million ideas you wanted to throw in there?
Oh no, I was just gonna say from my personal experience, like I before didn't think that I would click on ads on TikTok or like even Instagram Reels. I'm starting to, because the algorithm is so good. Which so if you're thinking about doing ad spend on TikTok or like Instagram Live, like it does work. Like
Yeah.
I almost bought a shirt. I'm not in, like, I don't have games coming up on my thing. Mine's just like fashion and stuff like that. But like I almost bought stuff, so it does work, especially if it's attractive and it's something that I'm very much interested in. So it works. That's just
this panel is
pure
powered by
experience.
TikTok.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
it. What is it going to do to grow social footprint? That's a great call out. I think in terms of something that this kind of taps into the next question I was going to ask too, when we're talking about paying a lot of money to be doing these, these big activations, it can be tempting to kind of just sit back and watch it happen. And I think a really key thing, and we've chatted about it in panels before, is this is a great opportunity for your channels to go in and engage with this community. Like, drop in there and say, hey, we just paid for this. Like, this is a sponsored stream. Any questions about the game, we'd love to be involved. Follow us on Twitter, stuff like that. I mean, every single dollar you spend is an opportunity to grow that social footprint. And that could be a potentially easy way to do it. Make the most out of the money you've already spent by getting involved in whatever that content is. Get in chat, and be there. And creators have a lot of people coming at them all the time, and they remember the games and the managers that go out of their way to have not a relationship with them, but to be an asset to them and to be a resource for them. I'm sure Kelby can talk to that far more than I could. But I think that that's an easy in to continue to grow stuff. I think that was a good segue into talking about some pitfalls in terms of influencer contracts. I know Vicky, one of the ones I wrote down, and I loved Vicky's call out, was being too rigid in guidelines, right? Like, if I don't get this many call outs, I'm going to be really grumpy about it. I don't know if you guys have seen anything or had any thoughts on things that are pushed really often that it isn't worth the hype, and there's more effective ways to do it. What are some pitfalls in general of looking over these contracts and looking for an influencer to work with?
I think not being collaborative enough, because a lot of companies and brands, especially if they're like non-endemics, they don't understand the community that they're trying to engage in, and they don't understand that the creators community and what they respond to the most, especially if you're working with like the small to medium-sized creators. You definitely have to collaborate with someone you're trying to sign on or you're trying to engage with, because they are your best chance of spreading the word of your game or your brand or your product. They know what their audience is gonna like, and their audience is gonna support them, especially if they know that they will only engage with brands that match their brand. If they're not aligned, you're not gonna have a good time, and all the KPIs that you set out that you want to achieve, you're not gonna get them, just simply because
Right.
you're not on the same page, and you have to really work with the creator in order to deliver on the best results.
Yeah, off the back of what Ricky said, something that I've just seen so much over my career is that if there are red flags in pre-sales, there will almost certainly always be issues in post-sales. So if it is really difficult getting to the finish line of tracking somebody down, getting response, negotiating a deal, contract red lines, it's not necessarily that either party is right or wrong. It may just be that you guys aren't really compatible for what you're looking to do. Like you may have business objectives that you need to hit that the influencer doesn't want to work towards, or ways that they like to interface and integrate partners into their community that doesn't work for you. And that's fine, but it probably means that you guys are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and like it might just be easier to walk away, even if you're aligned on expectations for deliverables and compensation.
It's also good for your mental health as like
Yeah.
We've all worked with creators before, and like you have the ones that are very professional, and some of them are just really not. And do yourself a favor, get someone that likes your product, is aligned, and is professional.
Love it.
Better product at the end of the day, and everyone's going to be happy. And I think we've all seen how that goes. So
yeah, I would also just say that definitely do your research on a creator before you even reach out and start this whole conversation. And by research, I don't mean just like look at their stats and look at their social media, but really do like a deep research. Like what are the messages that this creator stands for? What are some of the past like material that this creator has worked on that like maybe fits your message or really promotes a certain personality that you're looking for. But definitely do your research and make sure that that this is the right creator fit for you. I think it kind of goes back to what Ricky and Kpis were saying, like being collaborative, but definitely I want to say like not to put a lot of not to put Twitter even on more spotlight than it currently going on right now. But yeah, I would say like, look for someone's Twitter. I think like on their social media, although I know like social media is kind of fake, people kind of like put on a persona, but I think there is an intention behind putting a certain persona online. So it definitely is a great way to kind of like do a research on a creator and like really start thinking about like what is your expectations and what are your like how do you imagine this collaboration is going to be, right? Like I think a lot of times brands need to be very, very hands-on. It's better to be hands-on than not to be hands-on about a lot of things. So definitely do a deep dive before you start committing, and don't just kind of reach out to creators just to fill the numbers.
Good call out. We just got a great question in chat. Have we noticed any major differences in performing recurring sponsorships or long-term sponsorships versus getting to hit new audiences by switching up influencers frequently? I know when I've worked with Kpis, the pitch has usually been, no, it makes more sense to build a relationship with this person, even though it's hitting the same audience over and over. But I think that's a great question. I'd love your guys' thoughts on that, the new versus, or multiple new people over and over versus picking one and just really sticking with it.
I definitely have thoughts. I can lead off again. It will. So I mean, I handle both brand and game side. It will definitely vary depending on which one, and also depending on the type of game that you have. If you have a live service title versus like a single purchase indie, RPG that's coming out, for the live service title, like, EA is a client of ours that we work with. When their new seasons come out and they have battle passes and skin releases and all that stuff, they work with us and creators that they've worked with historically to get messaging out around those products. But if you're doing like a single purchase, RPG title, then you're probably best fit, spreading it as wide as possible. And the other thing that you want to be mindful of as well when you're doing this process is looking for audience overlap, right? Because it's very common, obviously, that somebody who's watching an influencer watches multiple content creators, and you don't want to be retargeting the same people or paying to hit the same people necessarily, right? So you may think that like, oh, I really like this person and this person, but you need to, and there are tools out there that you can get access to that will, get this data for you. Or do they have, what is their audience overlap like? And am I really spending a lot of money to hit the same sort of viewer? Now, you may want to hit them twice. That's totally fine, because there can definitely be some effects there. We're like, oh, I saw Lyric playing this, and now I'm seeing Co playing this. They both must, they're both seem to really enjoy this game. I should, go out and buy it. But do you want that to be, 4, 5, 6 times or something like that? So you just need to be discerning in that process.
Yeah, great call outs. Ricky, Vicky, anything to add on that?
I also just want to say that I think it really depends. Some of the strategies that I have worked with from the past is just, especially if it's like a brand new product and it's the creator's first time, working with the company, like, how I would approach this is, let's do this for like a 30-day trial. Let's like really closely monitor the results and really work closely with each other. I think, as like from like, a brand standpoint of view, from my past experiences, it's better to have creators who is responsive and easy to work with, and you really need to have like a trial period before you could really jump to conclusions. So I think definitely my approach has always been, let's work on like a one-on-one basis, see how things go. And if we're seeing results and it makes sense and the community, like the audiences, want to see this type of content again, let's make this like a reoccurring thing. But I think it really depends on the game studios, right? Like, is the community receptive of it? I think a lot of times most deals probably start with like a short-term contract rather than just like I'm going to do this repeatedly, and we're going to start off like right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think an interesting thing too is making sure that you have a reasonable timeline for when you think you're going to get results from this. And that can be stretched further by if you're asking for like what Kpis suggested earlier of whitelisting and making sure that there's VOD content on multiple platforms. That tail can go for a while, so it isn't like, oh well, we had this stream at this time on this date and nothing happened and this all of our numbers didn't spike and we're not billionaires. You have to let the algorithm work. You have to make sure you set yourself up for success, because ideally all of it will stack and build on itself, and it will be more of a long-term play. So it's not a flash in the pan. So I would try to resist the urge to immediately expect results exactly at that time, and realize that this is going to be a long-term play. Just doing something for a month with one creator and you don't absolutely crush it doesn't mean that isn't the right creator for you. It means you have to be patient and wait for everything to kind of grow. I think probably like a 2 to 3 month thing is like an okay test. I don't know, Kelby, if you have any suggestions on that, but I've seen people that are like, well, we did one stream once for and it just was done, and we ranked it on 30 days and then nothing happened, so that was it. And I feel like that's kind of a disservice to getting your foot in the door with influencer work.
I also want to add, like, the method is not necessarily like mutually exclusive. Like, you can do both at the same time. You can develop the current creators that are really big fans of your product in your game, and at the same time reach out to new creators at the exact same time, and they could be like evangelists of your product. Like, I'm a very big brand fan loyal of, like, say, Square Enix as an example, small indie company, but any game that they release, I am always down for. And like, all the creators in that space, like, as long as you're constantly a sense, like, we'll call it farming the current amount of creators, it's a very low cost effort for you to now them be your marketing spend for you, and it costs you a brand new game key, which for most companies that doesn't cost very much at the same time. So it's something that may want to consider doing both at the exact same time. One is much lower effort than the other one, costs less too. So
yeah. And I think that brings up kind of an interesting point that I wanted to make. Yes, there's all this promotion that you can do to promote one game, right? But also making sure that you're promoting your entire company as a whole, right? Like I know if Annapurna comes out with a game, I'm going to buy that game. I just know it because I trust that brand. So it's not only learning how to promote the game title itself, but it's also all of the other stuff around it. I know if something comes out by Freedom Games, I'm probably going to like it. I know if something comes out by Annapurna, I'm probably going to like it. That isn't, but the thread that ties all those games together, right, is the overarching brand who's making this game. I feel like you see that with everybody, CD Projekt, all of that, right? Like I don't even think we've mentioned a game in this panel, but we've mentioned the creators of games multiple times. So I wouldn't go out of your way. I wouldn't forget that. Make sure that you're promoting all of it. Game moments, yes, but tie that other overarching brand in too. Okay, another question that I think could be tactically very helpful. Are there any tools that you guys use or have used in the past that are really helpful that you feel like people looking through this, yes, look through Twitch, yes, look at their TikTok, but these are tools that are really, really helpful? Thoughts, feelings?
Yeah, we use NoScope, which is a proprietary tool. I will disclose. There's no fee to use it. It's free to everybody. But it's essentially just like an analytics scraper for Twitch that we use to pull like all of our data without having to log into creator dashboards manually. Also, there are paid tools out there. A paid tool that we really like is GameSight, which is essentially kind of all of the things that I talked about with regards to like advanced analytics, something that we look at all the time in regards to audience overlap, who, you know, is a good fit for the genre and game, and like brand fit and all of that stuff. So
Love it.
I was gonna say, Ricky, I feel like when we used to work together, we used a lot of Solinome. Back in the days, what I really like about Solinome is that you could kind of export some of the data into a spreadsheet, which is super useful. But did I just?
Yeah, I think the standard in the industry of people that want to have a low cost effort into finding new like creators or games or stats is Solinome. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously gonna say Rainmaker because I have free access to it, but like, yeah, Solinome is a great product that I've worked closely with in the past to get data from too. So, yeah, no, it's all of them are great tools, but
Yeah, and I think that is a good call. There are a lot of tools that can make this easier, right? It doesn't have to be a super spooky, endlessly manual process. There are things like Rainmaker and all the things that we've mentioned that can make this a less intimidating process and less of like, well, I guess as an influencer manager, I'm going to sit on Twitch all day and I'm going to hope I find the person with the right vibe. You know, there's a lot of other tools that you can use, both paid and not. You will get what you pay for, right? Like if you go with a higher, oftentimes you'll get a better kind of a white glove service and a little more help. So it's kind of also the discussion of, yes, there are tools that are free, or yes, there are tools that are, everybody can use. And some of those are perfect, but does your team have the bandwidth to do all of this manually? Does it make sense to be reaching out to somebody like Kpis of like, hey, this is our goal, we need influencers, can we talk to this agency? Does it make sense to be using something like Rainmaker that's like, I want to figure out how to even get started in this? So using something that is a paid service isn't a cop-out. It's protecting the bandwidth of your team and
100%.
letting people that are good at what they do their job really well. So everybody hit up Kpis and everybody give
I encourage anybody to like do the exercise of like just go and looking at a creator, think of a game, even if you're not a game developer or you are a game developer, try to find like the category, look at their content, view a bunch of VODs, what are the platforms they are in. Do that manually and just calculate the amount of time that you spend on that. Like that's why agencies like Loaded exist and why they're so successful, or like platforms like Rainmaker exist and why we're so successful is because we remove that manual process. It's insane. To let you know, like I usually spend like 7 to 10 minutes, and it's not a very quality amount of time that I'm spending because like I'm zooming through and then times that by the amount of creators that I'm potentially looking to bring onto this particular campaign. Let's say about 25. To find that 25 will probably take me a full-on like 40-hour week.
Yeah.
And by then I'm gonna need a drink. Essentially, by the end of that.
Yeah, your eyes are crossed because
your eyes are crossed. And and you're like, they all kind of mold to be the same at the exact same or at the end of the day. And yeah, so it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing on our own behalf is just that when you're working with a third party group that does this as, like their full-time job and responsibility, the level of data and experience that we have as a product of, just doing this full time is, worked with hundreds and hundreds of creators on thousands of campaigns. So there's just like a wealth of knowledge to pull from, and that's really like the big kind of focus for us. And obviously, like the nice thing about being at Loaded and having been at this company for 4 years is that because of our position in the market, we just have a lot of really good data from the biggest campaigns. So we have very informed decision making for our campaigns and processes.
It's one of those intangible KPIs that you can't really talk about. It's more of like the quality of the service, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think that highlights, if anyone has taken anything from what we said, that this is not a test that you can do haphazardly. If you're going to start to get into influencer stuff, and we've talked about this on panels before, this is not like a test that you think is going to be super low lift, not a big deal. They're going to do all the work, because it will fail if you're not active, if you don't do all the stuff. So yes, there are tools to make this a lot easier, but don't like sully the experience of working with influencers and set yourself up for failure by thinking this is going to be a super low lift thing. It does get easier. It always gets easier, but it isn't something that you can be like, well, I don't know, this person's never done this before. We have no idea. We might as well just throw a test at it. Brace yourself for the fact that this is something that if you're spending money on it, should work well, and therefore it's going to require a little bit of onboarding and trust. It isn't like an ad platform that's like, yeah, if you give us your credit card and an ad asset, then we're going to go and we'll run it perfectly.
Yeah,
it won't work like that.
Like I always like to think about the last time I bought a product from like a commercial or something. Like not to knock commercials, they attract different types of like demographics and age groups and stuff like that. But like I buy stuff from influencers. I hate to say it, like the 20-year-old Ricky would be like, shh, go away. But now I'm like buying stuff from influencers because that's just the content that I consume, and I would argue and say the same that it applies for everyone within like the 12 to 28-year-old, right? Gosh, 28 too young, 40 even.
Yeah.
The millennials and the Gen Zs and stuff like that. I'm throwing those words out there, but like that's how we are now consuming content. So
and it makes sense logically. It's a much more impactful voice when you have somebody who's acting as an ambassador that you like and enjoy and regularly consume their content versus the way that typical ads are run is it is getting in the way of the content that you are wanting to see. So I know that Twitch is having a lot of
what
fun
are we
with this
talking about?
So.
No idea what you've
we have no idea what you're talking about, Kelly.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, and understanding that those relationships long term too really build that. A lot of the stuff that I like purchasing, it's a way to also support a creator, and that makes me happy to do too, right? Like when I've worked with Loaded for years, I worked with one of the people we've worked with is Travis Gafford. With a lot of his fans, and we want to support Travis, right? Like, yes, we want this laptop. Yes, we want this piece of hardware. It makes sense to do it, but I'm buying it because I trust the influencer that I'm getting this content from, and I want to do something that is also going to help them. And I think that's a really important thing to pull in too. You get to involve a human element when you work with an influencer, and that can be very stressful for a huge multitude of reasons, but it also can be really beneficial because you're helping support the content creators that are helping promote and push your brand, and that's a really exciting way for people to be able to feel like they can get involved in this campaign, and I love that. Something I wanted to kind of chat about, something I always love talking about, are there any campaigns that have stood out to you guys that you've worked on in the past that you've really, really enjoyed? There was something about them that just kind of hit that perfect spot. I know Kpis worked with a huge amount of people. Vicky, I'm sure you've all over the place too. Have there been any like favorite campaigns that you guys have worked on that you were like, if I could put in a dictionary, this is what an influencer campaign should be, it's this one, and what made it that way?
First. Yeah, my examples are unfortunately not indie title examples. Not to say that they couldn't be replicated in the indie environment. But to me, like I thought that the way that Respawn and EA decided to launch Apex was, tremendously smart, something that nobody had ever done before at that point, and also obviously proved to be wildly successful. Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, I think the success of all of these campaigns are going to be dependent on the quality of the product that is being shown and advertised. The marketing that you do here just helps ensure something that you have that's great gets the success that it deserves. It will
Right.
not make a terrible title, wildly successful, because games are for people to enjoy and have fun. That's why they play them, right?
Right.
Another great example of a campaign that we did that I thought was really awesome was the Doritos Bowl back in 2018, which coincided with the launch of the COD Black Ops 2 when they first introduced Battle Royale into the title. It was kind of just like the marriage of the right set of influencers like Ninja and Shroud kind of at their peaks around a title that was doing really well. They had a live event at TwitchCon with a format that was extremely compelling. I was really, really proud of the team on the production end that put together the format that we ended up using for that event. And it was just like the viewership and the attendance on site. It was just like the most popular thing going on at TwitchCon. So
Love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Apex Legends. I think that whole launch was like definitely one of my favorite moments in gaming, just because it really came out of nowhere. And I thought it was gonna. At first, I was like, okay, it's just another battle royale game. Like, what's so like neat about it, right? And then after seeing all the creators, just like it just exploded overnight. Everyone was playing, and that's when I like installed the game too. And I was like, oh shoot, like I can see why this game is successful. So I think it was definitely like a very stealth launch, but also it did a great job at just captivating like the whole gaming community interest. I also have a campaign that I really like, not necessarily a one that I worked on, but I think in 2019/2020, HyperX had like this whole campaign of we're all gamers, and personally, I really, really love that messaging just because it connects like with it basically did a great job like breaking down the stereotype of what a gamer is, and really showed that like gamers could be of like all types. I think they did a great job at promoting diversity in the campaign, and it's still definitely like one of my favorite campaigns just because it has such like a great universal message that promotes positivity in gaming. And I think that's something that the overall gaming community could use more of, which is just positivity, promoting diversity and equity.
Yeah, that's a great additional call out. When you're looking through all these influencers, make sure that you have a diverse lineup. Make sure that you're hitting multiple groups and it doesn't all look like the same kind of influencer, because you're gonna miss out.
100%. Yeah, that's a good call out.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Ricky, first off, before you answer the question, pop off on the lighting. You're glowing.
So I live in a loft, and this skylight hits me usually around this time, so I'm struggling a bit here. I'll be quick on mine. I just did a campaign just very recently on our platform for Odyssey Games. They released Omega Strikers. I'm not sure if you saw that trending on Twitch. They used our platform to give away, oh my goodness, like 7,000 keys through our platform. So we got the nice old like hug of death of internet on our platform, but we fixed that in 10 minutes and started shooting out keys. And that was the funnest one that I worked on, just simply because of the fact that it was just the viralness of it. Like everyone likes the fact that you get to be competitive. It's a very simple, quick, and easy game to pick up, and it's nice. It's like it's like League of Legends air hockey, for those who's never checked out like Omega Strikers. So I worked with Ryan and the Odyssey team very closely with that, and launched without a hitch, realistically, and they got a lot of large creators, promoting and checking out that game, and that's honestly the best thing that you can get is having big creators pop off on that game. So
yeah,
that was a really fun one.
That virality without
That was just
having
last week.
to-
Yeah,
yeah.
last week.
We got our work Slack was like
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was
yeah.
a fun one.
I remember popping in at like 12:30 in the morning helping them out for everything after a night of karaoke. So that was great.
Perfect time to
It's
start
perfect time
hacking
to
into some
start.
back-end stuff. Love that. I know we're kind of coming up to time. We only got 5 more minutes. A question I kind of saw pop up was the difference, and we've kind of touched on it, but the fact that there are so many different platforms that you can stream on. There's so many different platforms that content can live. How do you guys think that that's really affected and impacted the way that influencers are taking deals and considering deals? Have you seen that kind of shift the priority? I know Vicky, I'm sure, can pop off on this, especially with all of the rise of everything TikTok. So feel free.
Yeah, I want to say that first and foremost, I want to say TikTok Live, not biased. It's an amazing platform.
Not biased.
No, but yeah, I think it's just with the way how TikTok Live, the platform is built out, right? Like it's not just tailored towards people from your follower base, but the For You page does an amazing job at gaining, helping creators, and also whatever content gain, impressions and views, etc. If the creator is really good at like maintaining their crowd and making sure that like the new traffic coming in are like staying and watching, I think it's an amazing way to kind of bring your games or bring your content onto like new eyeballs. I want to say definitely TikTok Live is the best place in terms of impression right now, and I think that's why so many creators have flocked to TikTok Live in the recent days, because they do see the potential in growth, and they do see that there's a chance to kind of like gain a set of audience outside of the normal circle that they're reaching in. And I think that's really appealing to brands and influencers in general. It's just that there's just so much discoverability on a platform if you know how to captivate it right. I've seen creators that get like 100,000 followers within like a past few days on TikTok just because they're able to utilize and make live content that are engaging. Okay, I'm gonna stop plugging TikTok Live now.
We get it. You like
We
TikTok.
get it. Big fan of
Yeah.
TikTok. Got it. I feel like the conversation is more important now than ever. If anybody's been paying attention to kind of what's going on in the whole space in regards to a platform which we all kind of know about, Twitch. Being able to kind of diversify your portfolio across multiple platforms has always been something that I would say we as us as a group have been telling people. Like, just because they're on Facebook, just because they're on TikTok, or they're on YouTube, those are still eyes. Even if it's 200, it's 200 eyes, or 50 eyes. Like, you have those individuals consuming the content regardless of what platform you're on. If you're not diversifying and spreading your content that you are creating in multiple different forms, whether if it's live, VOD, short form, if you're not doing that, you're not being successful. You're not being successful to yourself, and you're doing yourself a disservice, essentially. So if you're a content creator listening to this, or if you're indie, like if you're not looking at other platforms to spread the word of your game or your brand or your product, very much doing yourself a disservice.
I totally agree. And I think, Kelby, feel free to pop off, but I think that when you're thinking about influencer events, they want to make it work, right? So that isn't something that you're necessarily going to get nickel and diamond, especially if you decide to go with an agency like Loaded or whatever. That's something that they want the content to do well, and that isn't something you should be afraid to ask for. It should be something that you're ready to deal with. That you don't have to just keep blinders onto one platform. You should kind of diversify. Random thoughts, Kelly, before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, off the back of what you were just saying, people may not realize this, but for the overwhelming majority of content creators, they will always monetize directly from their audience to a much greater degree than they will from game and brand partnerships. So, to your point, they care most about audience retention, engagement, and viewership. They want content to succeed and do well. And then the other thing I was going to mention with regards to the platform side is something I think that's slept on right now a little bit, and Vicky, you can cover your ears if you want. But like YouTube Shorts, I see doing very, very well, and I know that as a platform, they're pushing it really, really hard for getting views and use out there. So that is something as well that I would think about as a part of like the platform diversity and where we're seeing content populated.
Dance here, that means we're getting kicked out.
Yes, sir. Indy's in the house. It's time to go. No, thank you. As once again, it's always an awesome. It's awesome broadcast when y'all come together and share this wealth of knowledge. And so I thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at TwitchCon. You better stop by our booth, Ricky.
We will.
Not me.
Sorry, man.
I'll be there in spirit.
Sorry, you can be there in spirit. You can be there in spirit.
Send pictures.
Yeah, before we bounce, I would like to once again shout out Tripwire Presents. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. And speaking of Tripwire Presents, guess who's up next? Ooh, Tripwire Presents. Yes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Have a good
This was
one.
fun. See ya.
Thanks, y'all.